How's it going, Heroscapers? My name is Knox, and we're here to teach you a little bit about painting.
Hello, I'm Gina, and I'm here to learn how to be painting.
I'm really excited. This is Raylan, the Kyrie Warrior from the Age of Annihilation set from Heroscape. It's a base box. It's coming out. It's very exciting. This figure is amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
She's a Valkyrie warrior riding on top of Chimera.
Steve.
Named Steve, we decided. That's not official.
It's not official.
But we're just, our loving name for this character is going to be Steve. Just for this painting tutorial, as it were.
Yes.
We're working with some different paints here. These are acrylic, and if you're new to painting, we don't want you to be intimidated. This is a very easy process, and hopefully everybody can follow along.
Yeah.
You don't need 1,000 paints. Just a handful can really make it work. You're an artist, so you know that you can mix colors and you can create your own look based on just a few things that you might have at home already. These are specifically miniature paints, and it is good to use them because they can thin a certain way and they're going to make your models look really nice, but there's no rule that's going to keep you from using something that you might already have at home. We should probably just get started, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's dive right in.
Okay, so this is been primed.
Yeah, so a prime, and it's really important. This is how the figure comes if you look at this here. And this is a plastic. It's a durable, flexible plastic. It's not going to break. The figure has been built for you. So sometimes models come in multiple parts.
Sure.
The great thing about these is that they're all ready to go.
Yeah.
The only thing that you have to do is put a prime coat onto them. Now, priming is when you put a layer of a kind of a textured paint. It's very subtle, but it allows the other paint to stay on the model.
Something to grip to.
Yeah, it's pernicious. It's gonna hang in there.
Yeah.
It's gonna make sure that you don't lose things. Otherwise, if you just paint your model with the model paints that you have, you're probably gonna rub the models off when the paint off when you're playing them, playing with them at the games that you might be using them for. So the best thing to do is to put a prime coat on. And the way that we've done this, it's what's called a zenithal prime, which sounds fancy, but it really isn't. We painted it black and then we just sprayed from one direction with some white paint. And the reason that I did that was because it creates an underpainting of shadow. So we're gonna use our paints, but we're gonna thin them down. And by doing that, we're gonna allow some of this to kind of come through.
Yeah.
And it's gonna add depth and darkness automatically. It's gonna be really dramatic.
It already is.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost ready to go, right?
I know.
We're done. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Great. Hello.
We hope you enjoy the
Bye.
tutorial. The first thing that you should know is that you're gonna need a few tools to get started. So you've got a brush.
I've got a brush.
I know that oftentimes you might hear that you need a lot of brushes or you need certain types of brushes, but really you just need one good brush, and that can be the kind that Army Painter provides within some of their box sets, or it could be something else. But what you're looking for is something with a sharp tip and the belly, which is the top part of the brush there where all the bristles are. That is where the paint and the water, all that collects right there, and you kind of hold it. And so that allows you to transfer the paint to the model without having to dip back and forth a lot. When people paint models, I think a lot of times they think, this is a small figure.
Sure.
I need a small brush.
Yes.
And that isn't true. What you need is a really sharp tip, because a sharp tip is gonna allow you to get into the details and transfer the paint without it drying out before it gets to the model. So it's the perfect brush to get us started. And we're just gonna use this one for this entire project. It's important to keep your brush clean. So you're gonna need some water, and it's just simple water. There's nothing else to it. But because these are acrylic paints, it's very easy to use that to kind of do what we're doing here today.
Okay, great.
Now, I've given us 2 cups of water.
Yes, why?
I have given us 2 cups of water because we're using metallic paints. And a metallic paint is formulated differently.
I didn't know that.
There are mica flakes inside of it.
Yes.
And the mica flakes can actually get onto your brush and get into your water. And then if you're painting white or red or something else and you dip it into the water that you were using, you might transfer those little sparkles elsewhere onto your model. Now, some people might want to put sparkles all over their model, which you're allowed to do. That's a choice.
Sure.
But do it as a choice.
Yes.
So I like to use 2 cups of water.
Great.
Other than that, all the paints that we're using here are pretty much the same. There is another exception. We're using some of the Army Painter tone paints, which are washes, which allow us to use a thin ink-like substance to get into the crevices and all of the dark shadows of the model, and to create a really high contrast on the model quickly.
Great, and it's just like that thin layer that seeps into all the cracks and make it look all realistic.
So when you're painting small models like this, one of the biggest things to remember is that contrast is absolutely the best thing that you can provide to your model. That means color contrast, that means tone contrast. So the darkness and the lightness of your model together is gonna help you because your models are all gonna be seen from a distance, right?
Yes.
And they're very small.
Yes.
So it's what I like to call the 3-foot rule. If it looks good from 3 feet, you've done it right. Okay.
Where should we start?
Well, I've gotten some handles here. Now you can use anything. You could use pill bottles with a little bit of poster tack on it. You can use double-sided tape. All this is gonna do is prevent us from touching our model while we're painting, because there's nothing worse than doing a lot of like really intricate paint work and then putting your big thumbs all over it and having it smudge.
I can't believe I've never owned one of these. This is amazing.
Yeah, these are readily available. These are a little fancier, but you can use anything at all as long as it's comfortable. And it is important that you have appropriate posture and that you're using tools to kind of keep you from like hurting yourself while you're doing it. It's easy to, as my friend calls it, shrimp up. And if you shrimp up while you're painting, you're gonna have a backache at the end of your session.
Yeah.
So, just be ergonomic about it, be safe and have fun.
Great.
All right, so let's pick out some colors. Now, we were talking about, from the bottom up and kind of like working into the deep parts of the model.
Sure.
Where, the bottom layers of color might be. And then working up slowly so that we choose colors that are gonna stack on top of that. So we're not, for instance, painting these wings when we still have to get in here and paint the fur of the battle cat.
Got it.
Because then you might transfer paint to places you don't want it.
Sure.
And you can always mess up. That's the great thing about this hobby is that, mistakes are absolutely allowed and it's really the best way to learn. But you can always clean things up. And so starting down here, kind of in the deep recesses of the model, working our way up with some colors and kind of getting to the finish line is the best way to go about it.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of colors here. One is a little darker than the other, and we're gonna choose the darker orange, which I'd say is that one right there. And you can just take that and put a little bit into your palette.
Don't forget to shake your paints.
Don't forget to shake your paints. That's so important. You already know.
That's the only thing I know about paint. You gotta shake it.
So, there's a medium inside of every paint, and it will separate if it's been sitting too long. And so by shaking your paint, you're making sure that all the parts of the paint are mixed up and ready to go, and you get the full color coverage and everything perfectly adheres to your model.
Yeah. How much paint should you be using when covering something of this size? Since we are going to be diluting it a little.
Well, that's a great question.
A good dollop?
Yeah, a dollop is good, but you can always add more paint first of all. So if you want to save on your paints, don't put a bunch out, because no matter what, once they hit the air, they're going to start drying, right?
Yes.
And so even if you feel like your paint is still okay and you're still using it, you might find that it's starting to become really thick. And if it's thick while you're painting with it, you can hide the details on your model.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that we always use water. And so these are acrylic paints, like I said before, and they can be diluted and mixed with water. So what I like to do is take my brush and just get a few drops of water, and you can put it there in the palette next to the paint that you're using. And depending on the paint that you're using, you can kind of choose, how thick you go with it. But if you mix it, the rule that I like to use is that you're looking for something that it kind of feels and looks like coffee creamer in thickness.
Oh, okay.
So it's opaque, but it's still runny and it moves and it has a definite, it slides down the side of your palette or whatever you might be using, right?
Okay.
So, and you can always work with it as it goes along. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time.
Okay.
But the thinner your paints are, the better. You can always add more paint. It's harder to take it away.
Okay.
So with our models in hand, we can go ahead and just start putting on the first layer now.
I feel ready.
Yeah, I know. And like this is kind of, you follow your instinct here, but you're just gonna follow along the figure. We're gonna paint some of the fur, work our way around, and then when we're done with that, we'll talk about another part of it.
Awesome.
All right?
Okay,
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. It's always the first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
First stroke is done. Now you can see that because we've thinned our paint down, you can still see underneath it. You can see the lightness and the darkness of the primer coat that we used. We can use a couple of different coats if we like to be able to darken that up, or we can leave it as it is and give it a kind of a dramatic look. Those are the great choices that you kind of have when you're doing these things. So, you do want to keep your brush clean, and you don't want to get paint into the ferrule of the brush. Now the ferrule is the metal part of the brush.
Okay.
where the handle of the brush is being held, and then the ferrule holds all the bristles. So keeping the paint out of the edge of the ferrule is going to give your brush a much longer life, but also it's going to prevent it from splaying out any of the bristles, so that it's easier to paint because you've got that sharp tip.
Got it.
And I'll every once in a while I'll rinse off my brush and I'll twist it there between my fingers or on my hand and just make sure that I've got a really sharp tip. And because of that and taking care of the brush, we only need the one for this, and we're gonna be able to do a lot of great detail with it. So we've got our orange on the base fur, right?
Oh yeah.
And we're ready to move on. I think we're gonna move over to the metallic paints now.
Yes.
And so we talked a little bit about metallics and how they have a mica flake inside of them that gives them that kind of metallic sparkle. These are called true metallic paints, which means that when you paint it on, it already looks like metal, it's ready to go. I think you might hear other terms if you do a lot of miniature painting, like non-metallic metal and things like that.
Oh.
There's a whole world to get into, and we're gonna make sure that they're shook well. You wanna shake your paints always, but especially with the metallic paints, because if it separates, not all those parts are gonna be joined together and you're not gonna have a good result.
And I remember, we use a different cup of water for the metallics.
Oh, you're learning. You're already doing it. We're halfway there.
Wow.
I'm gonna pass this off to you. We're using a little bit of a gunmetal right now, which is a darker metal. We're gonna come back with a silver metal, and we're gonna do highlights later on, which we'll talk about. But for now, we're just gonna start with something dark to get a good base down. All right, so let's get in here and let's paint the metal. Obviously, you can see where it is.
Every part that's armor.
I know, there's so much of it. This battle cat is definitely ready to battle. Much like our other paints, we're putting down the metallics, and it's not that different from the others. We're looking to get a nice even coat, and we're not trying to do this necessarily all at once. I think a mistake that a lot of new miniature painters do is that they go too heavy with their paint coats. And if you're thinning things out and taking your time, you might need to put 2 or 3 coats of paint down on the model, and that's perfectly fine. It's part of the process.
That already looks so good.
It does, right? Like next to the orange, and it immediately feels like we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Raylan also has armor on.
Yes, she does.
There's no reason for us not to just go ahead and start painting some of that armor as well.
Of course she bought it at the same store.
She bought it at the same store. She wants it to match.
Yeah, she's got to match her fierce best friend.
I'm painting kind of the back part of the armor here, and it's in between the wings, and you can see how it's kind of difficult to get back there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just kind of like work with your brush and move it around as you see fit. Some of that's just practice, but don't be afraid to experiment and do what you need to kind of get in there. All right, we have gone so far already, right?
Yes.
We have a very strong fur color for our battle cat. We've got some metallic color laid down for the armor, and I think we're ready to move on.
Yes.
I think we're ready for some red.
Yes.
We can paint Raylan's wings. And you've got a pair of wings here with feathers, so it'll let you know. You're gonna see all the little feather hairs.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Look at that.
Oh.
It's a very good red.
Oh, yes, it's a beautiful red. Is it okay that I'm making little bubbles?
Well, if you're bubbling, it should be fine. But what that usually means is that you're mixing a lot of air into the paint mixture with the water. But what it also means is that you've thinned your paints down well.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And just try to use the end of your brush to kind of flick the bubbles away so that they don't remain on the model.
Yeah.
Because if they do, they might create little streaks and uneven patches. But that's totally fine. It's not going to hurt anything as long as you're willing to kind of move it along and don't let it sit there.
Okay.
Let's put some red here on the tail. And then we'll have black for the wings, and we'll paint some of the details and put on some stripes. Then we'll talk a little bit about flesh tone.
Perfect. I struggle with flesh tone.
It's a difficult subject, but it's one that we're gonna address, and we're gonna get right through it. If you do have a little shake, or if you wanna make sure that you're really stabilized when you're painting, all you have to do is find a surface, and you can lean your arms directly on it, and then bring your hands up so that you have kind of a tripod with the model, and you're holding it in a way that allows you to stabilize. Yeah. And then I always use my pinky, like I'm drinking fancy tea, and I'll put my pinky up against the stand or the model, and I'll use that to stabilize as I hook my hand over. The black I'm also gonna carry over. I'm gonna paint the handle on the spear. I'm going to kind of—
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna look around and see what else might need a little bit of black. I am in love with this figure. It looks great.
I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, we got the smile.
Yeah, we got the teeth in there. We've got the spear. We've got all of Raylan's wings and armor painted.
Yep.
We're ready to move on. Now, we're getting kind of close to being finished with all the base coat, but we haven't talked about skin tones yet.
Yeah.
And it's a really important thing, and I know it's something that intimidates a lot of beginning painters. So I think it's important to spend a little extra time with it. You can paint your figures any way you want, and there are a variety of skin tones in life, and you should also find a variety of ways to paint skin tones when you're replicating them on your models. Again, it's about telling the story and choosing the characterization that you want to find. I think I'm going to paint a darker skin tone on my Raymond.
Okay, great.
And if you want, you can paint a lighter skin tone. We've got some different paints here. And again, it's all about the colors that you choose. You can always mix paints. Different shades of tan and white and beige and brown and purple and green even, you know? You mix all these together and you can do a lot of work with skin. But I think the important thing is not to get too intimidated by the process and to just find what works best for you. Yeah. It's better to not hold your breath, I find. I mean, everybody's different. But if you're like painting and you're like, oh, I don't want to mess up, and you're holding your breath, you might cause yourself to shake more than you intend. It's best to take a deep breath and then relax it as you're painting.
That's a very good reminder, because I always forget to breathe. Always.
Yeah. We've managed to get all the base coat down on the model. We've painted the flesh. We've made some really great choices about the color of the hair and the way that we wanted our models to look. And now we're ready to move on to another step that we haven't quite gotten to yet. So we're gonna do a little bit of layering. We're gonna do a little bit of washing, and we're gonna do a little bit of highlighting. Now, these are all techniques that you can learn a great deal about. They can become very complicated, but for us, we're gonna keep it nice and simple. We're gonna be using some of these Army Painter strong tones, and we're going to use these washes so that we are able to kind of bring out some of the details in the fine recesses of the model.
Okay.
Now, I would recommend that we use these washes, not on the wings, because they're already dark, but I would say maybe on the areas here where the fur meets the armor, maybe on the armor itself to give it a darkened kind of tone around the mouth and in the eyes and sort of anywhere where there might be extra shadow, right?
Got it.
And these paints are a little different. Like I said before, they have a different viscosity to it. It's definitely thinner. It's a lot more like an ink than it is a paint.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it's gonna flow right into those recesses.
Okay.
And it's gonna leave a color wash across the whole thing. So wherever you put it, it's definitely going to change the quality of the paint, kind of like the color that you're working with. So be careful. Now, you don't want to thin these out unless you don't like how strong it is. If you want, you can use a little water and kind of cut it down. But
oh, it's already pretty thin.
See, it's already thin. And I'm just going to take it, and if you can see here, I'm just kind of drawing it along the edge of the line where the armor meets the fur. And you can see how great that kind of makes that separation, and it adds contrast, right? And that's going to help us get to where we want to be. And I'm going to focus around where Raylan's legs kind of meet the armor, so that especially that area is darker, so that her armor kind of stands out from the tigers. All the recesses in the armor themselves, I'm not necessarily just slopping it all over the place. You can do that and you'll get a perfectly good result, but I think that it's also very possible to pick and choose.
More strategically.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna put it all up in the mouth.
Do it. Yeah, it adds, and it also, it hides a lot of the crimes. You know? So like if there are areas that you feel like, oh, I could have painted that a little better, it's a little sloppy, try putting a wash on top of it. You might be surprised at what you can get away with. It's very important when it comes to any sort of wash that you might be putting onto the model that you really let it dry. If you don't let it dry and you start putting other paint over it, you're gonna find that it moves and that it kind of bleeds into the colors that you're putting down, and you're gonna have a lot of trouble working with it and around it.
Okay.
Yeah, so just be cautious there.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're both getting there.
Definitely.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what layer painting is.
Okay, please.
Layer painting is where you take a similar color to the first color that you put down and you build up onto it. So you might go with a dark color, and then you put a little bit of a slightly lighter color. Now you can mix this yourself, or you can, in this case, find a color that's pretty similar, but just a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
And then you stack the paints on top of each other as they get lighter and lighter. And what that does is it builds a sense of volume.
Yeah.
So that you can kind of create the shapes around your model. So like the muscles and things like that. Once this wash dries really well, I'm gonna take some of these other paints that we've not used yet. We've already used the lava. Now I'm gonna move over to this lighter orange.
Okay.
And I might even mix it in with a little bit of the bone color or some of the flesh color and just bring it to a point where it's a little lighter, right? So the trick to this is to only add a little bit and try to build around it and then leave enough room to put another color on top of it. So it goes from dark to light and it kind of like a pyramid is stacked and it gets smaller and smaller. You want to put your lightest colors in the direction where the most light would be.
Yes.
So when you're painting your model, kind of think about where they are and how you want to replicate the light. There's 1,000 ways to do that. But you know, a good rule of thumb is that it's probably coming from above.
Yes. The sun.
Yeah, there are exceptions, but you know, for the most part, it happens that way. And so what you can do is load up your brush with some of that lighter paint and just work it over the areas that you want to have a little brighter.
Okay.
And make sure not to paint over everything and try to keep it out of the crevices so that you still have areas that are dark. And if you just kind of drag it along the edge, you can kind of just like hit the high points like this.
Oh yeah.
And see on the claws how I'm just kind of going over and I'm still leaving all those good details and all the darkness right there.
Yeah.
And it's really gonna make the details pop out again. And it's about that contrast, right?
Definitely.
I'm gonna take a little bit of this deep blue color and I'm going to get a little water into my brush and thin it out just a touch.
Yes.
And I've watered it down a bit. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here to the black wings.
Yes.
And I'm gonna do the same thing with the layer painting. And I'm gonna actually paint this dark blue over some of the areas of the wings. So like the spines of the wings, kind of where the musculature is. And I'm gonna just drag my brush along those little sharp details. And I'm gonna pull those out with the blue. And even though I'm painting it blue, since the majority of that object has been painted black, when you see it, your eye is gonna be tricked.
Yeah.
And you're gonna read it as black, but it's gonna have all the depth that it should have. But again, purely optional. Like we could have stopped a few minutes ago, but this is just adding a little bit of extra detail to the model. And it doesn't take very much time to do that.
No, not at all.
Right?
Look at those toes be popping.
The toes are popping now, right? Because
those toe beans are popping.
You got the darkness and the light, and it builds the contrast. So you can see it from far away.
Beep, 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 beep. Look at that. Look at that toe. It's so cool.
Take a little bit of red and a little bit of pink, and I'm gonna just quickly touch on the wings and do a little layer there. And then we'll move on to details.
Okay, great.
You feel ready?
I feel so ready.
We're so close to being finished.
I'm so excited. I love the blue on the black.
Okay.
Yes.
Last steps. Here we are. We've gone on this journey together.
Yes.
We've painted an amazing model.
Yes.
And we're ready to finish.
Okay.
Now, when you come to the final details, again, you can go as far as you want. I mean, this is perfectly fine. We could take these and go play a game of Heroscape right now.
Definitely.
However, I think that we can go a little further. So let's paint some of these details. First of all, because of the primer and everything like that, the base is now this kind of gray. I think we can do a little better.
Yeah.
We'll put some stripes on our tiger if you want.
Yes, we have to.
We have to, right? Steve needs stripes.
He does.
And we're gonna go ahead and paint like gems and all the little things. You've already started. I
got excited.
Yeah, that's the best news that I've heard all day is that you're so into the process that you're enjoying yourself and moving on. I think I'm gonna start. I'm gonna take a little red myself and do kind of what you did with the blue. But if you want,
nice.
But if you want, you can go ahead and get some color here that you like and go ahead and paint the base.
I'm gonna paint the toenails and then I'm gonna paint the base.
And I've already painted the toenails.
You've already painted the toenails.
So we'll be caught up together. I'm gonna paint the top of the helm. There are some sort of wings on there that match her actual wings, so I'm gonna paint those red as well.
Cool.
Yeah, right?
I'm putting Steve through a pedicure.
Yeah, I think that our battle cats are very ready to go.
I love
They
it.
look great. Are you painting them with little purple toenails?
Yeah. This really feels like the part where you can add a lot of storytelling.
And you can do whatever you like. I actually like that you added a blue gem. I'm gonna add, I think, a purple gem on the center here. She is wearing, it's probably a magical jewel, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely.
When it comes to the stripes, you know, you can do this a couple different ways. We can use black, we can use brown. I'm just gonna mix a little black and brown together and kind of make a darker brown color. Water it down, keep a really sharp tip, and then I'm just gonna choose a couple of little areas to put some of these stripes down. Oh, I like that.
Got it?
Yeah, check that out.
Oh, sweet.
And like, you see, we've already done the highlights there, so it just kind of comes out.
That
and the
pops.
darkness makes it pops. There's that word. We got
pops.
it. And you know, never be afraid to kind of move your model around. I turn it upside down and flip it, try to get a better angle at it. Whatever's comfortable, you know.
Definitely.
I always find that it's better to pull your brush downward than to try to push it forward.
Yes.
Because it keeps the sharp tip and the bristles don't flick in weird ways. I know that I'm controlling it. I'm letting gravity kind of do it. And if you're having trouble keeping a sharp tip, you can always roll your brush a little bit, you know, like right before you put it onto the palette, right there. Just roll it a little bit, get it nice and sharp, and then go back in.
Yeah, I've also been finding that just kind of taking 3 fingers and just kind of going,
Yep.
look at that. Perfect.
I think I'm gonna move over and I'm gonna do the last step for me, which is gonna be to add a little bit of color onto the base, and then we're done.
Sweet. Okay, I'm doing the tiger stripes.
So while you're doing that,
Yes.
whenever I'm done with a painting session, I always like to completely wash my brushes. And what I do is I'll take my brush and I'll take it over to the kitchen or wherever I have a little bit of dish soap, and I'll put a little dish soap in my hand and I'll rub the brush through it and just gently kind of give it a shampoo without like breaking the bristles or moving it back and forth, just twisting it between my fingers and on my hand, being very gentle with it, and then rinse it out really well.
Okay.
All right. And
So
then
dish soap.
Yeah, you can use there are special soaps and things like that, but there's nothing that you can't do with just a little soap at home. And just make sure you rinse it out completely, and then twist the top of your brush so that it has that point again, and then store it on its side.
Oh.
Just find a place to put it where it's not going to get ruined. Sometimes there are these little plastic sheaths that come with your brush, and you can put that back on your brush. It's going to protect that tip, and it'll be ready for you for your next paint session. Make sure that all of your paints are capped. If there's any extra paint on the tip of the nozzle, you can just wipe that right off with a paper towel, and you can store it nice and tight. And acrylic paint is great because it washes right off. So this palette, as big of a mess as it looks like right now, you'll be able to take that and rinse it off and have it ready for the next paint session.
Yeah, and I use these all the time because sometimes I don't always am as diligent about cleaning, but it just pops right off sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you can just scrape it right off.
Scrape it off.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of ways to move forward with it. I mean, like I've had these and they've been a total mess, and I just spray paint it white. Go over it from
nice.
there. Yeah. Look at this. Well, I think we have a lot to be proud of. We have finished our Raylan. We've come a long way, but I mean, look at this amazing
We gotta
model.
do the spin.
The spin. Yeah, here we go. I'm super excited about this. I'm very thankful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you were able to do this with me. It's really nice to have somebody here to walk through this with me. Oftentimes when you're trying to teach something, you forget that there are a lot of different steps.
Yes.
And that, you know, having somebody ask questions helps.
It really is so fun. Cheers.
Cheers.
Dink.
All right, everybody, we are done here. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in this, all you have to do is follow Renegade and keep track of what they're doing. I know they have a great Discord community. I'm sure that they'd be happy to teach you more there. You can find friends, share photos of the miniatures that you're painting, and, you know, just stay tuned. I'm sure there's a lot more coming out really soon.
Definitely.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.